Hey everyone, Midjourney has pushed out v8.2, so I did what I usually do and threw 100 prompts at it. Every one of them went through 8.1 as well, with the same seed, so we can actually see what changed. I split the tests into 10 categories, with 10 prompts each. After each one, I'll stop and tell you which model I think won, and at the end, I'll give you my overall take on whether 8.2 is worth switching to. I didn't use any personalization, so this is purely the baseline model style, and I do like the --HD option to get nicer quality out. Let's start with hands and gestures, because that's where AI has always embarrassed itself. If 8.2 hasn't fixed anatomy, nothing else really matters. The soap bubbles give it away. 8.1 makes them look like solid glass orbs, while 8.2 gets that fragile, hollow film right, and the skin texture on the hands is excellent. Big jump in anatomy here. 8.1 is still throwing in extra fingers and joints that bend the wrong way, and 8.2 just builds a hand that works. Interlocking fingers absolutely break the older model. It melts them together. The newer one keeps them separate, and the handshake reads properly. 8.2 sorts out the mess here. It blurs the motion the way a camera would, without adding extra fingers or that confusing ghosting we get from 8.1. The old version gives us these exaggerated, bark-like wrinkles. 8.2 dials it back to skin that looks like skin, and the fingers behave better too. 8.2 has the better skin and the more natural pose. But I'd give this one to 8.1. The light trails are distinct, and the grip on the sparkler is more believable. 8.2 warms up the lighting nicely, and then drops the ball on the hands. There are finger artifacts all over it, while the older model stays clean. 8.1 understood the prompt. One person's hands praying. 8.2 goes off the rails here and gives us two separate people holding hands instead. The tool interaction is much better in 8.2. The grip on the chisel makes sense instead of the awkward blended shape 8.1 keeps giving us. The older set has bad finger mutations and gritty texture. 8.2 comes back with lovely skin and lighting, and then throws in a third hand. So, hands go to 8.2, I'd say 7 rounds out of 10. Joints and skin texture are clearly better. But when it fails big. Extra fingers, sometimes extra hands. Faces and emotions next. We're all experts at reading faces, so this is where you spot a mistake before you can even explain what's wrong with it. 8.1 goes for thick, expressive brushstrokes. 8.2 heads straight for hyperrealism, and the liquid detail and skin texture get a lot richer because of it. Much more realistic in the newer model. 8.1 couldn't settle on one style across the set, while 8.2 commits to cinematic lighting and really detailed skin. Lovely volumetric morning light in 8.2, and the mangled fingers we had in 8.1 are gone. Better light and better anatomy in the same set is a good sign. This time, 8.2 softens the skin detail that 8.1 pushed way too far. It's a more natural portrait, and the salt sits in the image properly. 8.1 takes the prompt literally. Crying figures and fog everywhere. 8.2 goes symbolic instead, with sharper texture and better anatomy. The older set wanders off into sketches. 8.2 keeps it cinematic with deeper texture, and honestly the whole thing feels a lot more dramatic. Another shift into photorealism from 8.2. Cinematic light, sharper texture, and better hands, all replacing the stylized look the older model went with. The veins and the anatomy underneath them are much better in 8.2. It also completely ignores the gritted teeth in the prompt and gives us wide-open screams. Photorealism again. Skin, specular highlights, water droplets on the glass, all sharper than the more abstract styles 8.1 came up with. Big style change in this one. The old version is vibrant, painterly illustration, and the new one is gritty, cinematic realism with heavy lighting. Faces go to 8.2 pretty comfortably, about 9 out of 10. Perfect. The trade is that all the painterly stuff is gone, and it still drops the odd word from the prompt. Moving on to people and portraits now. Once you've got a whole person in frame, there's clothing, props, and the scene itself to get wrong, not just the face. The newer model has the vendors actually roasting the chestnuts in the pans. Small thing, but the scene finally makes sense, which it never does in 8.1. 8.1 flattens the reflection into a double exposure. 8.2 curves the earth along the visor like it should, so the geometry works. The old version goes full caricature, exaggerated fantasy features everywhere. The new one swings all the way over to normal human proportions and natural skin. The ballerina's feet finally make sense in 8.2, and those flat background lights turn into proper cinematic rays while we're at it. 8.1 sticks to tight portraits. 8.2 pulls the camera back so we can see the gear, and it gives you that sense of someone emerging. The newer model nails the harsh directional flash of a studio strobe, and the fashion itself looks more modern and structural because of it. The fishing nets are the giveaway. 8.1 turns them into chaotic brushstrokes, while 8.2 gives us actual mesh under nice sunrise light. Completely different mood. The old version hands us fairly standard portraits, and the update goes dark and cinematic, which makes it a lot creepier. 8.1 is comic book, sharp line art, and heavy inks. 8.2 goes textured and painterly, with much more dramatic lighting. Hands again. And again. 8.2 wins. The fingers actually push into the dough, with none of that morphing the older model does. That's a clean sweep for 8.2, all 10. Anatomy, lighting, and the logic of the scene all improve. If you generate people, this update is a straight upgrade. Wildlife next. Fur, feathers, and scales are a nightmare to render, and the animal has to move like an animal too, so there's plenty to get wrong. The newer version drops the lazy background blur and gives us real interaction with the environment, kicking up snow and dust to sell the leopard speed. 8.2 looks more real here. Darker backgrounds, more dramatic lighting, and those hyper-detailed feathers pop much harder than in 8.1. 8.1 gives us stylized octopus sculptures, almost decorative. 8.2 goes for the real animal, sitting in an environment it would actually live in. The old model just shows a puppy running. 8.2 curves the body round and actually gets the tail chasing, which is what we asked for. Stronger, more consistent silhouettes in 8.2. It also drops the watermark artifact that turns up in the older set. That hyper-saturated artificial look from 8.1 is gone in the update, replaced with natural light, nice bokeh, and water droplets that refract convincingly. The newer version places things properly in space. The orcas sit in the water and ice instead of floating around like they do in 8.1. 8.2 manages the extreme 180-degree head rotation in the first image. The older model won't do it. It just keeps facing forward. 8.1 splits the colours in a harsh, artificial way. 8.2 blends them much better, and then completely mangles the chameleon's anatomy in the first image. 8.2 goes for high-contrast sunsets and deeper silhouettes, where 8.1 settles for a flat, uniform orange haze across the set. Wildlife is 8.2 again, around 9 of 10. Texture and lighting improve, and the animals sit in their scenes properly. The one loss is anatomy, and it's an ugly one. Food and drink is trickier than it sounds. We all know what a pancake looks like, so the moment the texture or the gloss is off, you see it. 8.1 gives the syrup that hyper-glossy, magical glow. 8.2 is much more photoreal. The pancake texture is natural, and the syrup pours like syrup. The old model reads the prompt in a surreal way, claymation and goldfish. 8.2 grounds it into traditional food that actually looks appetizing. 8.2 moves the focus from the chefs to the wedding couple, which I like. Then it ruins it with much worse artifacts in the hands. Better hands here. The earlier version struggles with extra fingers and melting tools, and the update gives us real grips and better fire integration. The older model turns the flour dust into something closer to sparks. The new one renders fine airborne powder caught in the sunbeam, which is much nicer. Watch where the noodles meet the chopsticks. The physics get messy in 8.1, while 8.2 gives us a much more convincing lift. This one goes the other way. 8.1 builds clean, structured layers, and 8.2 turns it all chaotic, with ingredients tumbling everywhere. Fluid physics beat the older model. We just get unnatural, syrupy streams. 8.2 pours realistically, and the crema on top is spot on. Grips are much better in 8.2. 8.1 gives us awkward fingers and duplicate tweezers, and the newer set has natural poses under darker lighting. 8.1 mixes 3D renders in with paintings and breaks its own consistency. 8.2 sticks with one traditional oil painting style the whole way through. Food goes to 8.2, roughly 8 rounds. Fluids and textures are much better. But 8.1 keeps the tidier compositions, and it's still the more imaginative model. And even beyond the numbers, when we look at the pure creative output, it is clearly still the more imaginative model overall. We see these strengths across architecture, modern interiors, and even vast natural landscapes. This is because big scenes are fundamentally all about spatial logic. So perspective, scale, and lighting have to hold up across the whole frame. The newer model puts people in these huge concrete spaces, which instantly fixes the scale. The lighting also moves from artificial spotlights to warm sunbeams. 8.1 builds traditional, photorealistic cathedrals. 8.2 reads it as cinematic fantasy instead, with huge scale and surreal organic growth all over it. Much sharper detail in the rock layers with 8.2, and the softer lighting makes the geological strata look properly real. 8.2 is more photoreal across this set. The light is softer, and the fabric textures and the rain effects hold up a lot better. The eerie atmosphere gets deeper in 8.2. Darker lighting, thicker fog, and those figures that turned up unprompted in the older set are gone. The aurora looks photographed rather than drawn in the newer version, and the light on the snow is softer and much more natural. 8.1 does beautiful reflections and then leaves the alleys empty. 8.2 fills them with people, and that's what makes it feel like a busy market. Lighting and texture win this one. The shadows across the tatami and the wood grain make 8.2's minimalist room feel much more real. 8.2 makes the waves far bigger, and the whole thing turns into a violent, dynamic collision with the cliffs. 8.2 fills the terraces with water every time, and those mirror reflections really amplify the sunrise colours. Another clean sweep for 8.2, 10 out of 10. Scale, atmosphere, and light all improve, and it stops adding things that weren't in the prompt. This might be its best category. Vehicles, machines, and sci-fi. Hard surfaces have to obey geometry, and this is also where we get a decent look at how each model handles text. The newer model spells diner correctly on the neon signs. The engine mechanics on the motorcycle and the wet pavement reflections are much better too. The ships in 8.1 are detailed, but they're stylized. 8.2 upgrades the cinematic lighting, the designs are sleeker, and they sit in their environments properly. Cinematic light and volumetric smoke replace the flatter, illustrative look of 8.1, and the airship finally feels like it belongs in the sky. Structural accuracy wins it here. The old model can't work out the halo and the wings, and the new one gives us something with believable aerodynamics. 8.1 builds stylized robots with flat, decorative gears. 8.2 gives us mechanical depth instead, layered clockwork that looks like it would function. Better rock texture and depth in the trench with 8.2. And it moves away from that slightly exaggerated magical glow 8.1 had. One stylized illustration sneaks into the 8.1 set and breaks the consistency. 8.2 keeps it photoreal throughout, with lovely volumetric lighting and more atmospheric depth. 8.2 understands how the drones should be built. The older model gives us floating boxes, and the newer one makes something that could plausibly fly. 8.2 gets the film noir prompt. High contrast spotlighting and deep shadows, instead of the cluttered, warm-toned thing we got before. Much better cinematic lighting in 8.2. The mechs have more dynamic poses, and the dust and debris give you a proper sense of scale. Machines are a sweep for 8.2 as well, 10 out of 10. Geometry holds together, the lighting is cinematic, and it even got the signage right, one of its strongest areas. Fantasy creatures and mythical scenes. There's no reference photo for a dragon, so this is about imagination, composition. And ultimately, it comes down to whether the model really reads the prompt at all, turning imagination into reality. 8.2 actually coils the dragon round the peak and has it breathing fire. The older model misreads the whole thing and gives us erupting volcanoes. 8.1 gives us polished 3D digital illustration. 8.2 goes classical and painterly, with strong brushwork and proper fine art lighting. The bioluminescence separates these. 8.1 uses little fairy light dots, and 8.2 has it glowing from inside, radiating out through the vines. The old model frames the creature tightly. The newer one pulls back and shows us sweeping dawn landscapes and much grander castles. 8.1 renders the magical dust as heavy smoke. 8.2 turns it into fine, glowing motes with really nice volumetric lighting. This round goes to 8.1. It at least tries a split-level view to show the surfacing, while 8.2 ignores the surface and stays underwater. The Phoenix has real upward momentum in 8.2. The fire looks far more realistic, and it blends into the glowing ash beds underneath. Lovely, atmospheric depth and glowing eyes in 8.2. Then half the set turns into physical canvas prints sitting on a floor, which wasn't the prompt. 8.1 melts the hands into the stirring sticks. 8.2 clears that up. The fingers and the tool interaction are much better. The old model keeps sticking the horn on a nose or a cheek. The newer one gets the placement right, and the painterly reflections are gorgeous. Fantasy goes to 8.2, about 8 rounds. It reads prompts better and it paints better. But it does invent canvas frames, and 8.1 still wins when a scene needs 2 layers. Abstract, surreal art, and typography. There's no obviously correct answer to most of these, and text has been every Midjourney model's weak spot so far. 8.1 falls back on fabric-like folds and drips hanging off the edges. 8.2 warps the clock faces themselves, which is the Dali effect we were after. Much more explosive, fluid energy in the update. The text goes backwards though. It misspells the word that 8.1 got right. The old model puts its stairs in realistic environments. 8.2 commits to impossible, isolated Escher geometry, which is the whole point of the prompt. 8.1 leaves us with a solid, sculpted bust. 8.2 adds splashes and movement, so the liquid metal actually looks like it's forming. The older model wins this one. It puts the neon text flat against the alley wall like it should be, and 8.2 suspends the sign across the middle. 8.2 clearly shows the signs swinging in the wind, so we get real motion. In the older set, they're basically stationary. The mandalas in 8.1 are intricate but completely static. The newer one gets the explosive energy, with sweeping fractal shapes bursting outwards. 8.1 keeps giving us raised letters or shapes you can't read. 8.2 gets it right and engraves the word deep into the stone. The old version just overlays broken texture onto one face. 8.2 renders separate reflections inside realistic mirror shards, which is a lot harder to do. 8.1 leaves the house stranded on the ground. 8.2 puts it where it belongs, right inside the giant hands. Abstract goes to 8.2, around 8 rounds, and it understands surreal prompts much better. Text is still a coin flip though. It engraves stone perfectly and then misspells the next one. Last category, style stress tests and very long prompts. Same subject in wildly different styles, plus prompts long enough to see what each model actually holds onto. The earlier version piles on heavy, chaotic impasto. The newer one tightens up the anatomy and settles into a consistent, traditional oil painting. The fox has more natural, relaxed poses in the newer model, and the line art is a bit cleaner, which helps the cel-shaded look. More expressive character poses in 8.2, and little environmental details like the dry grass make the Pixar style feel a lot more alive. 8.2 does a far more convincing 16-bit style. The pixel sizing is consistent, and the fox's face is noticeably sharper. The watercolor blooms and paint splatter look much more authentic in the newer version, and the fox anatomy loosens up instead of staying stiff. 8.1 gives us abstract, heavily stylized cats with surreal decoration. 8.2 pulls it back to grounded realism with much better lighting. The foreground is the difference. Water ripples and silhouette detail are sharper in 8.2, where 8.1 stays soft and atmospheric. The newer model sticks to exactly twin moons like we asked. It also darkens the mountains and puts more texture into the cracked soil. The mangled hands are fixed in 8.2. It gets the whole interaction right, the fingers, the tools, and the scroll of the violin. 8.1 goes for surreal, stylized concepts. 8.2 goes somewhere else completely and gives us realistic, cinematic landscapes instead. Stress tests go to 8.2 across the board. It handles long prompts better and stays consistent within a style. The downside is it defaults to realism when you wanted something strange. So, my verdict. 8.2 won every category, 4 of them without dropping a single round. And something like 90 of the 100 comparisons overall. It's the better model, and I don't think that's really arguable. Although the differences can be really subtle. I would add a caveat though. 8.2 leans hard into cinematic photorealism, and a lot of the painterly weird side of 8.1 has gone with it. Text is still inconsistent, and every so often you'll get a third hand or a canvas frame you didn't ask for. So use 8.2 for anything realistic, and keep 8.1 around for when you want stylized or surreal. Let me know in the comments what you thought of all this, and leave a like if this was useful. Thank you so much for watching, and let's continue prompting.